America, America, make God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and ever again divine.
Hey, thank you all for joining us today on this special day. We're actually going to be talking about something that is very important to not just myself and my guest here, but to a lot of people in our community, especially sitting with the Hispanic community. We're going to talk a little bit about racism and what's happened, what we're seeing in Fairfax County Public Schools. With me, I have another candidate, Harry Jackson. He's running for Hunter Mill. He's also came from a different background, just like myself, that shaped us into what we are today. And I'm going to let Harry give a little bit of intro about himself.
Well, great. Well, we can talk about some of the differences, but what brought us together, we're both veterans. I mean, you're a Marine. There's no such thing as a former Marine. I'm a retired naval officer. For those of you that aren't familiar with me, I'm Harry Jackson. I'm a candidate running out of the Hunter Mill District. My opponent is Melanie Marin. A little bit about me, how did I become who I am, how did I become involved in the school board race, a little bit about background. I grew up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is central Pennsylvania, PA. If you do a Google search of one of the most racist areas in the country, especially during the 2000s, they'll probably bring up central Pennsylvania and Lancaster as one of them. So I did have to overcome challenges due to racism throughout my life. I didn't let that hold me back. I'm certainly not going to let that impact my children, as we're going to talk about systemic racism that is present within our county. And if you want relevant proof, take a look at the front page of the Washington Times and the Washington Post, both this week, where they talk about where the Coalition for TJ, which I'm a founding member, which we are having a case go before the U.S. Supreme Court to fight against racial discrimination for admissions as TJ. And that's just one example, but there are other issues that we are facing in the community, not just impacting the Black community, the Hispanic community, but also Asian communities as well, particularly when we have a school board that's looking to limit accessibility to advanced academic programs for various communities for various reasons.
So, we all have our journeys going through this, and there's a reason why, subjects like this really hits near to our hearts. And I can tell you that, growing up in a very progressive area in California, we personally are subjected to this type of stereotype and racism where you're told that you can't achieve certain things, that keep your dreams, to lower those bars, lower it down. And, growing up in a very progressive school, minority school, I think we had a handful of Caucasians. I really didn't meet much Caucasians until I actually joined the military. Mostly it's going to be Hispanics, Blacks, and Asians. So living in a very minority-based community, I was told that, keep your dreams low, and the reality is what's in front of you is all you're going to get. And as a child, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize my potential until I actually got into the military, until I had good mentors. And what I'm seeing personally is that's happening now here in Fairfax County. I talked to a couple students, and one female told me that one of the teachers talked with a Caucasian female, and she had dreams about going to the government, doing various things. And the teacher was very pro for that, saying, hey, you got a plan, you stick to that plan, you can achieve that. And then when she brought up minority, female, Hispanic, the same thing, the teacher told her, you want to lower your standards down. And people don't see, what I think it is people in their good heartedness try to look and say, keep your reality down, maybe because you don't want to be disappointed in the future. But then again, it's actually racism because you're telling that student, you're not good enough. You can't achieve it.
And it's almost like teaching a student with not respectfully. For example, if you see two children of different colors, right? One child is encouraged to work through a problem where another child who might be struggling with color and might be struggling with it, but they may not mock them, but they certainly would be like encouraging them to work through or push past their challenges. This is something that I've seen, soft racism.
Yeah.
Like this is something I had experienced, actually, my kids have experienced it. One was expected when she was, coming out of, advanced academic program, and then to, go with a different group that wasn't, they wanted to take her out of a collaborative learning environment with other advanced learners. I had it with my youngest where she was completely acing all of her math work and redoing a lot of work. And they didn't want to move her up to the next group because she's doing well where she is. And like, well, the whole point is like she's in first grade. You just to push her passion or her comfort zone. I had to deal with this in growing up a little bit opposite. I was one of the only minorities in my area in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. I had to deal with issues where I was very interested in STEM, not being called on in class when I had to ask questions. I wanted to be an engineer. I remember my high school year, I had a 4.0 GPA. And my guidance counselor wanted me to go into to learn to go into CAD development instead of going to Harvard or Yale, Naval Academy, Air Force Academy. And I think you could relate to this as being seen as a minority. You're only seen as an athlete.
Yeah.
If you're a football player, hey, you got to hit the gridiron. And I did play football, but that's how I was viewed, stereotyped, as an athlete and not as a scholar, which I've had to work for, still to this day, have to work against, even though I've got a doctorate, 3 master's degrees, and I teach a number of universities.
But, and I'm seeing that now. What I'm seeing is a lot of, good-hearted people, I would say. I always look at people in a certain way that, hey, listen, their intentions are great. They feel they're doing something positive, but in reality, they are actually doing harm to the kids. They're doing harm to regulate these kids just to, this is all you can do. Don't achieve anymore. You're not going to make it. When I start looking at what society is saying, racism, equity, when they say, people start at different areas in life, yes, people do get opportunities. You come from an area that has the ability to get tutors and different things like that. Yeah, you're going to have that ability. But what I found is a lot of people, especially kids, through adversity build strength. And the things that I went through, the adversities, the not having a leg up or anything, built a certain character of a person that if you did come from a place of wealth, you're not going to learn these things to make you a stronger person as far as your character, as far as your drive to achieve even more. It says every success that I've gained was success that I worked hard towards. Nothing was ever given to me. And so I cherish those things. It means more to me because it was not given. I actually look at when you challenge, especially minorities and people coming from poverty areas and telling them that they can achieve. And when they do achieve, looking at kids, and when I try to mentor them and they start meeting these milestones, you see the joy, the proudness in their face. And I think by saying that's not important is taking away the fact that you're not shaping our youth to be the best that they can, to work on their own, to have achievement. I think TJ is a prime example where the merit scholarship, the merit issue.
Yeah, you're talking about the National Merit Scholar recognition. For those of you that were unaware that Thomas Jefferson was one of the first schools that failed to notify students that they were National Merit Scholars. It impacted 19 other schools. 3 out of 4 children that were impacted were of Asian descent that didn't get notified. And the impact that it had is it would open up doorways, being notified that you had this opportunity to over 800 scholarship opportunities. Now, the focus obviously was on the Asian populations, but what it also did was it also marginalized all African-American national scholars, which impacted my son. He finally got notified, so he can now start applying for scholarships using that designation. He would have been able to throughout his entire junior year had he been notified. It impacts all Hispanic national scholars as well as Indigenous persons. So what they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, and in their mind, with good intentions, what they're doing is they're doing a lot more damage. And this goes back to, I think, where the problems we see within our county is critical race theory, right? Where you start identifying people based on group identity instead of their individualism. And what individual characteristics that they have, and it's targeting minorities. It also leaves out the entire group, right? What if you're poor and white in Fairfax?
Yeah.
Like, you're really out of luck.
Yeah.
Right. There's like, there's no support. And everyone has their own struggles, and everyone is an individual. And I think that it's moved away from recognizing the individuality of a person.
Yeah.
And it's trying to place this in groups.
Yeah, and when I was growing up, I didn't realize this. I didn't realize that I was actually being handicapped by being told that I could not achieve certain things, or being told that keep my dreams to where it's at, or not being told the opportunities that were ahead of me. It didn't take until I went to the military for people to believe in me and say, hey, listen, you can achieve this, you can achieve this. What it was just like moving cattle through school just to get you graduated, and that was it. And it's amazing. I have friends from high school that achieved certain things, and friends that didn't. Really, I look at the ones that didn't achieve much out of life, and what if they had a mentor? What if they went the path that I went to? I believe in good mentorship, and it gets you a long way.
So what attracted you to move to Fairfax?
Never intentionally to go to Fairfax.
Okay.
It was actually the government, and like most people here,
Yeah.
the government moved me from San Diego over to Virginia, and then what moved me to Fairfax was really the distance going from here to DC.
Okay.
But this whole area is
It's incredibly diverse.
yeah, it's very diverse.
Very
I went to
diverse.
a couple of rallies, and I went to a couple of events, and the diversity of this area is amazing. And with this diversity, I think you have a lot of good-hearted people that have good intentions, but because they believe so strongly in stereotyping,
Yeah, they do.
that they lose the mark off of that. And and I'm not the one that's going to tell people, go out and say, hey, listen, you're a bad person. I think it's because their journey, how they grew up, maybe because they feel guilty that they've had so much, and they have to say, we're going to try to help you, and we're going to try to do certain things for you. For me, I don't believe in that. I don't believe that, people need to wake up. I think people need encouragement.
I would argue that it's being sold as a bill of goods that we're trying to address systemic racism and social inequalities.
Yeah.
With the narrative, because the narrative is dealing with inequity, they're dealing with societal racism or systemic racism. But interestingly enough, like stupidly, they kind of give us the playbook of what they're doing to be racist themselves.
Yeah.
Have you ever I've experienced racism when I first school. Have you experienced racism during your race?
It's funny because racism goes further into the fact that I was actually in the military, where somebody actually told me, what do you know about education? The best you could do is teach them boot camp. Wow. And I was like, wow, that is a very stereotypical thing. If somebody has never been in the military to understand, the basic stuff. For example, I started bringing up that, do you know if you go to sniper school, that you have to do physics calculations of that drop of the bullet.
I know you do not have to have math, right? You have to know like the curvature there, the
gravitational pull, the windage, and everything. I'm like, do you not understand how much math is in that?
a lot.
And so and then me being in the medical field, I had to learn a lot of medical stuff. So patient everything, drugs, different thing, how to administer, how much to push. So when I hear that from them, to me, you have not walked a step in my shoes.
And there's another person, they don't understand that, like you're like a spec ops guy. Like you actually have a lot of soft skills. Like you deal in different cultures. Like you're dealing with unsupported in a lot of areas.
And so when I hear that, when I saw that, days of being offended is gone. And what I look at is, you just don't know. You don't know what you don't know. And I feel bad because it reminds me of a lot of the kids or a lot of people I went to school with, that they live in the same area, they haven't expanded outside of that city to really explore different things. but they look it through a prism of their reality, and that's all they have.
Well, it just talked about like the anti-military rhetoric.
Yeah.
Like for example, like there was a privilege bingo that they had at one of our school board meetings, and on that board, it actually had on there, if you're a military child, if you're a child of a military family, you're privileged.
Yeah.
And I'm like, these people absolutely, the people who are making the rules as who's privileged and who are not, absolutely have no idea. Have they ever been to Fort Meade High School, which is all black and brown? Have they ever been to Fort Belvoir?
Yeah.
Do they not realize like half of our military are all black? They're black and brown.
Yeah.
And not just black and brown, just, and these are parents, and certainly even, it's even white, but you're dealing with parents who are deploying for 4 to 12 months at a time in dangerous areas. They may not come back the same person. And these are children who are missing their families, and they're certainly are not privileged.
Yeah.
And look at the lack of protection that they afford and support that they even provide the families. Like if there's like an assault, did you see the one video where the one boy was bullied and punched at by a girl, and they reported her for bullying him repeatedly, and she had done nothing. She had to pull him out of school. Or you see like in DC urban forums where they talk about a lot of military families because it's a very transient area. Like as you progress through your military career, you are going to come through Washington D.C. You're going to join the chief of staff. I've done 2 tours there. You're either going to, I'm from the intel community. If you're at Defense Intelligence Agency, NGA. We're the spy capital of the world. So you're going to come through this area. That's in addition to DoD. And so you have a transient area, so you're not going to have a lot of affordable housing in this area. And we can thank our current school board for jacking up the property values for that one. But it's where I'm going with that. You see, like on forums where there are people that would complain about families being able to people place their kid into what schools they want to go to. You want to talk about systemic racism, and the reason why you want to be people placed is that not every school offers the same programs. And they don't provide transportation to families to engage in those programs. And a clear example, look at AP versus International Baccalaureate.
Mm-hmm.
Most families overwhelmingly want to take AP classes.
Yeah.
Now, IB has its place. It does have its place. But does it have parity to advanced placement? No, certainly not. And they offer it in schools where there's no interest for it, like Lewis High School. There are some schools that really there's not really much of an appetite for AP, like Herndon High School, where I've in my district, they only had enough for one cohort, one class to offer some AP classes, but it's nothing on the level of what's offered at Langley, which actually mirrors what's offered offers many of the same classes offered at Thomas Jefferson. There's some good IB programs like South Lakes and Plain, but other schools, like you look at where the boundaries between IB versus AB, like there's a clear socioeconomic difference between the two. That's classic education red line.
Yeah.
So that's an example of systemic racism.
Well, because they feel that putting programs like that in those areas with that demographics, that these kids aren't going to achieve. They look at it as probably a waste, but. The thing is, we challenge people, especially kids, and they're sponges. If you put positive things into them, if you introduce, more STEM into their curriculum, if you make STEM fun, if you do certain things, then kids are going to gravitate towards that.
As a Marine, one thing when they was impressed with, they fought one of the arguments they had fighting against having spec ops in the Marines, right? Because like every Marine's a special operator, right? Because the Marines are famous for if you have high standards of people, they're going to achieve them. That's why we don't lower our standards.
Exactly.
And that's why you want to keep the standards high. So I agree. Like you don't want to have this lower standards. You don't want to deal with equity grading, which results in disaster, which they've done without any parental knowledge or consent. There was an issue that happened in Patterson High School, for example. We can go into equity grading, how that is very destructive in minority communities. The Patterson High School, for those who aren't familiar with it, in graduating class of 2021, like only 12 kids were at grade reading level when they graduated. Over a quarter were at kindergarten reading level, another quarter were at first grade, and then like another percentage was at second grade reading level. These are 12th graders. These are people who do not know from grades K through 3. That's where you're learning how to learn. And these are people who are literally ruined for life. And this is what contributes to, the school to prison pipeline, because when people get arrested, or they get incarcerated, they don't have an education. They go back to crime when they leave. So that's a systemic issue. And even blame equity rating for that, which was actually experimented with in a lot of minority communities in the 80s. That's when they started doing that. And now you're seeing that proliferate in this area in Fairfax. I don't think parents are going to be for that.
No, I don't think parents are for it at all. I mean, you start looking, one thing that I always say to a lot of people, I say equity, putting that to a child's head is a mental disease. You're telling them that they can't achieve unless we give you a handout.
Well,
and I don't agree with that. I don't agree with handouts. I agree that, I believe that in the Constitution's life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness.
Mhm.
Everything's gained through your hard work. I mean, that's backbone.
it is. Well, I mean, equity. Yeah, I have a little different view of equity, right? I think equity is about, by its definition, right? It's narrow, it's targeted, it's limited, but it's providing equal opportunity to access, right? It's one reason, for example, we have women's sports, right? We don't have just a football team, a basketball team, right? And you actually, because, for example, in sports is an extension of the classroom. If you don't have like women's basketball, women's sports, you're denying them you're denying them opportunities. And that goes into the VBOE, the Virginia model policy, why you necessarily don't have biological males competing against biological females. There is a physical difference there.
But I think we're wrong. So I use the word equity for what I call holding you back from achieving what you can.
Oh yeah, that's what that's the current. That's how they're using it in that context.
And I use what you're saying as equality. There should be equal amount of sports. There should be equal competition.
Right, or like reasonable or reasonable accommodation, right?
Yes.
Right, ADA accommodations,
Yes.
right? Americans with Disability accommodations. That's equity, where you provide like technology, or if someone needs like extra time to turn an assignment, that's reasonable, right? That is something that's reasonable. But you're right. What their term is that they're using, we see on the current school board and promoted even by the new superintendent is to push equal outcomes. And what you're seeing is that you are seeing that people being they're pulling people down, they're bringing the top down. They're trying to lower the ceiling of and diminish opportunities for people to demonstrate that they can excel. And they're making it almost indistinguishable as like who are your top performers and who aren't.
And so when you start looking at equity, it starts going into the racism part of it, where it's a very subjective thing. So somebody's saying, okay, you cannot achieve what you need to achieve, so we are either going to drop the standard because we don't believe that you can meet the standard, or we're going to, give you extra help to get to that. What I'm seeing is, because we're not getting extra help, we're not getting the added tutors or whatnot, then they're lowering that standard down. They're saying, okay, well, we're just not gonna, hold anyone to a high standard. We're gonna bring it all down because we want to make sure that you succeed in some way. It's kind of like that. Everyone gets a trophy.
Participation trophies, right?
Everyone gets a trophy.
It doesn't work, right?
At the end of the school year, at the end of sports, everyone gets a trophy. Everyone's a winner. We don't keep scores.
Yeah.
Because it may hurt someone's feelings. And so when we're playing this game of we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, you're not gonna achieve. I will tell you this, you look at all the great sports, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, all these great people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was it was Michael Jordan, where he said, he learned more from his failures than it is his successes.
Success, right. And
we build off of our failures. Nobody that's successful in life has a string of just successes. There's failures there that made them work harder.
As a professor, I mean, you're talking about the cognitive learning, where you have the ABCs of failures, where you provide the tools to succeed. You're allowed to fail. You're allowed to fail because you learn from your failures. And that's when you see, and then you can like correct later on. That's how you receive recognition. And they are denying those opportunities, like multiple retakes on an exam. I mean, you're not really, then the students are like, well, I'm just caring about my grade. Here's another issue. You're basically, they're focused on getting students to a particular proficiency and they're not measuring academic growth.
Yeah.
And they should be measuring academic growth as well. That way you know which teachers are very effective, and you can actually model. You can do community of interest to find out like which teachers they should be modeling, and which ones actually might need to be moved to something else.
Yeah.
So,
and also another thing that I see with this type of racism that goes out there, it actually creates a lot of division. Because now things are either within race classes as far as economics. Or race classes on color of skin.
It's 2023. It's amazing how our school board created a race war in our county.
Yeah.
They created,
And it's,
it started with Thomas Jefferson. I mean, like they wanted to change admissions and they said, and it blows one's mind. They said this school should match the racial demographics of the school should meet the racial demographics of the county. And I'm like, well, that's what local high schools are for.
Yeah.
And then they came up with a plan, a merit lottery, and it was like with surgical precision. It was blatantly anti-Asian. I mean, it was to make Thomas Jefferson was over 70% Asian, and they wanted to make it about 24% Asian with their first proposal. And that was just like, what are you doing? That's not going to survive. And then they ended up, during a work session, which is the current law today, which is being challenged in the Supreme Court. That's a very blatant case. And that wasn't, it just didn't hurt just Asians. It hurt, like I said before, Hispanic and Black communities in the northwestern part of the county.
Mhm.
That's where the second largest population of the Black and Hispanic populations are. And, in the admissions process, they don't give extra weight for students that are in advanced academic programs that are taking honors level courses, high school level courses. So right now, the classes that are being admitted are basically the highest common denominator. They may not take honors classes, which is one of the reasons, like for the class of like 2025, the first thing they had to do was all of them had to completely remove an advanced class and make that was a remedial class the standard. So they had to re-baseline, which is not good.
Yeah.
If you have a program management background, you start re-baselining something. And that's basically that group of, it was aimed at Asians, but it got all of your gifted Hispanic and Blacks out of the picture as well.
Yeah.
So that was.
And that, to me, that's, I hate to say that they're blatantly doing things, but I think that what they try to do is create this.
You think it was a good intent?
You always have to go in with their intention is to try to make a balance here, but in reality, what you're doing is you're taking away from certain people. Well, because you can't, if you want to make a balance there and say, listen, I want to make a balance because these people aren't, this demographic is not getting what we believe they should be getting. So you're infringing on somebody else's rights to be there to give to someone else.
Oh, okay. So
and so when I look at it, I always look from the heart of good intention, but because you're trying to race play and look at people on color, skin, or ethnic, you get away from the essence that we are beyond our color of skin. We are beyond our ethnic. Well, we are people.
You're okay. You're not there. Like I think that in some cases it's malintent, and I'll tell you why I think it's malintent. I look at the schools that they were impacted, the middle schools. Like most of them were, if they were predominantly Asian, they wanted to limit the number of students that can come out of that school and get to Thomas Jefferson. I mentioned before that they didn't wait or give credence to students that were taking honors classes. And one of the school board meetings, there was an admission by our mesh and Seth McCarthy said, we can have an entire cohort of Black and Hispanic kids that can go to Thomas Jefferson that are taking advanced classes, but they chose a different route, right? They chose a path of equity for equal outcomes. I look at the number of everyone who was impacted. Look at who the beneficiaries were of the admissions changes, right? It was every other racial group except Asian communities. And this is where I talk about the grouping people and not identifying them as individuals, because the Asian communities, that includes the Chinese, Koreans, Vietnamese, and South Asian, and they're grouped together, and those are very distinct groups. They're from different countries, different time zones, different cultures, different languages, different customs, and they just group them together and they call them and I've heard even horrible things being said, like called Jason Blank. So that's why I think there's malintent. And then when you look at admissions that are going into the school, this is just an example, it's just one school. And you're seeing over the last couple of years, you're seeing increases in white populations that are getting into the school from upper middle class family households from the southern part of the county. So I look at it as, I think it's a reasonable person would assume that was the intent, was to make it more competitive. So families from that area, more affluent areas that might be zoned for West Springfield, that have a fear because they don't want to send their kids over to Lewis High School, which is, again, under-resourced. It's under capacity, 1,600. They don't want to redistrict kids from West Springfield to Lewis. West Springfield has 2,600 students. These families aren't going to want to send their kids over there because that's an IB program. There aren't AP classes there. Or they don't want to send their kids to Mount Vernon High School. Mm-hmm. It was the same issue. So I think that when you start looking at the outcomes, what they're doing, they might be race neutral on its face, but there's a disparate impact.
Well, I don't think they're race neutral. I think they're looking as we need to, like you said, the demographics. We need to have TJ looking at the demographics, right? So
Right.
it has to be
That's where it started.
that has to be so many percentage, right? And with that, trying to make it in their hearts, hey, it's a good thing. You're actually taking away. Now, my thing is everything's based upon, the merit of
Competition.
And so if you take away the race off of that, if you take away the race in the name and just go off the body of work, everyone should be. That's how you do everything. That's what I enjoy with the, you learn in the military that now the current military, the way it's segued into, obviously, Army and different areas of the military, minus the Marine Corps.
Oh, here you go.
I'll go there.
Okay.
They're creating that type of thing where lower standards,
And the scary part is that you actually might see a battlefield defeat. And that's going to be disastrous, right?
Yeah.
Like an actual battlefield defeat.
Yeah.
I mean, right now we have the most powerful Army, Air Force, and Marine Corps in the world, and they're degrading that. And you might actually experience like an actual battlefield defeat. Like it happened to the Russians.
Yeah.
The big bad Russians. You saw it happen in Ukraine. It can happen then if you don't maintain a technological superiority, and you don't maintain. If you start degrading the quality of your forces, I mean, that can happen.
Yeah.
That has happened. I mean, remember growing up, like, you were always scared about the Soviets.
Yeah.
I mean, I did engineer OTC 4 years. I was at the Naval Academy. You're always focused on the Soviets.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing but the Soviets.
Yeah.
The big bad. And when you're coming across Russians, like the back of your neck stood up because you're like, if this goes real, this goes hot, like it's on. Like, and they're not gonna say, well, we're gonna do this in a very equitable and make sure we, appropriately hit our diverse targets. Like,
and that's what's happening. When I look at what they're trying to do, especially around in Fairfax County, trying to make things, more equitable and equal. Instead of looking at the color schemes and looking at demographics and everything, look at the body of work. Look at that, especially for somewhere like TJ. Now, if they are Fairfax County is truly worried about the Hispanic community, especially Hispanic community, because we have a large minority Hispanic community, where are the extra resources going? Right now, 21% high school dropout rate for the Hispanic community. I mean, you got 21% dropout.
That's what you're just tracking.
Well, I know. What are we doing here? So if they're really worried about, the kids, why are we not concentrating on that? Why are not money and resources going towards that?
And look at like tutor.com, right? For example, free tutoring service to address pandemic learning loss, yet it's not accessible to kids under like 5th grade.
Yeah.
Where it's needed. Or how about you actually start tracking kids who leave the school system?
Yeah.
Like the current system, if you're absent from school for 40 days, they just disenroll you. And to re-enroll you, they send like the notice in English. They know full well that English is a second language household.
Yeah.
Or how about providing like opportunities for pathways to prosperity? How about providing like a voc tech school?
Yeah.
I mean, do you think everyone wants to go to college considering how it's exorbitant right now?
And that's exactly what I've been pushing out there. A lot of these places is not doing, a lot of the Fairfax County public schools are not doing individual assessments on kids to see, what do you want to do? What do you want to do in life?
Or do they even resource? They don't even allow kids who do take VOTEC classes, like use power tools.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no reason why they can't provide that.
Well, it's because they're doing a lot of things in a social way, like social studies of different things that have nothing to do with actual getting these kids educated
and getting a good job. Like you can make 6 figures as an electrician.
Exactly.
You can get paid.
And that's one of my pushes to have, more VOTEC out there to where we can actually have kids experience certain things, get apprenticeships, and then move on.
But with the current school board, what have they done as they piloted, right? They piloted a program to offer classes in non-school hours, right? I mean, you're basically preparing kids to get like a nothing more than a Bachelor of Arts, which is good for some.
Yeah.
That's not why a lot of people come here. I mean, there should be a lot. There's STEM, there's VOTEC, there's sports and athletics. We can get started at athletics. We don't have middle school sports. We're just piloting it.
Mm-hmm.
And what sports are they offering? Like track, cross country. Come on.
And so when I look at the racism that's happening over there, Fairfax County is sitting there, trying to play this off that, they're pandering to the minorities. They're doing certain things like with this Tyson's Corner, the office building pushed out there, and it's all smoke and mirrors because in reality, what are you doing? Like you mentioned, not every kid wants to go to college. Not every kid's ready to go to college. Some of these places, some of these kids don't have the opportunity to go to college, but we can set them up with futures in trade schools. Are we putting money into trade schools? Are we?
No, we don't. We don't have any trade schools.
We have no trade schools. And so when you start looking at, the forgotten kids, these are our minority kids that are not being taken care of.
In most cases, a lot of them have special needs as well that are identified, because when you look at the number of kids that actually have approved individual academic education programs, it's a very, very small percentage. You even have activists out there that are well known, they go there who's known to actually to basically prevent minorities from getting their IEPs approved.
Yeah.
But I don't need to name that because I don't think hate should have a home, and I don't think I need to name who that person is. We all know she was in a press conference and recently attacked me. She was in the background.
So when I started looking at racism and everything, and what Fairfax County Public Schools is trying to do, everyone starts looking at test scores, SAT, and I mentioned on a campaign trail, people start mentioning SAT scores low. And I tell them, how many of these kids actually want to go to college? First off,
it's not worth it. I mean, look at the colleges. Look how tuition has more than doubled in the last 20 years.
And so when these kids are taking the SAT and you're measuring SAT scores are low, how many kids are actually just going through their A, B, C, A, B, C?
Well, not everyone has to take the ABC their way out, but I think kids even at that age, they realize that education is an investment in oneself.
Yeah.
What are you going to see as a result of it? So not everyone, again, equal outcomes. You don't want to provide the same curriculum. Everyone has different strengths and talents. You should be having a variety of programs that are available to students, so they can meet their full potential. That's why I think we're seeing the same sheet of music here. They should have trade schools. They should be looking, if you can't offer STEM, if you can only offer STEM courses at certain high schools, then you should open things up where you start looking at some of the private providers that can come in that can offer classes to kids. You have virtual experiences that can offer that. You can offer, if you are providing other academic education activities, look at the middle school programs. Every other middle school in this state has middle school sports.
Yeah.
They have basketball, soccer, football. We don't have it here in Fairfax. They're just piloting it now, convenient right before an election where we're not calling out you guys, if you want to talk about being anti-racist, we're supposed to identify racism and call it out. Yeah, we'll go that route. You want to open that door? Let's talk about it. You don't have high school sports. That would have kept. If you had sports in this county, particularly the middle school level, you would have kept a lot more kids in school at that time. They would have been motivated. I mean, if you're on a sports team, you have some really hard-nosed. You have hard-nosed coaches. You have to maintain a 3.0 GPA to be on this team. The kids need. You have set a high standard. The kids need it. And by not having that, or not having it being accessible, not offering after-school transportation for people who are involved in sports. They offer after-school transportation for sport activity at Thomas Jefferson, but they don't do it at other schools.
Yeah.
Who does that marginalize? That marginalizes low-income households or marginalizes single-parent households. That is blatant. That is inequity right there.
Yeah.
And there's no excuse when you haven't had an audit in 20 years. You've never gone through and assessed each program within your administration, within your school system, as does it really align to the mission of your school of the school board. And unfortunately, our school board couldn't even come up with a mission statement. They couldn't come up with a strategic plan. They had to do a survey.
Yeah.
That's why you have executives.
Yeah.
That's why you're in an executive position. You should learn how to write you can go to Defense Acquisition University. They have a level 3 program. Of course, they'll teach you how to do that.
Every place, every company, every corporation, even the military, you have a mission statement.
Every successful one.
First, you have a vision.
Vision.
Yeah. What this is going to be. What are we trying to do here? And I spoke a lot on campaign trail about vision. First, you got to have a vision. My vision of education here in Fairfax County is look at each student, find their strengths. What do they want to do in life? And build off of that. So a lot of kids want to go into vocational. They want to open up a business. They want to do AutoCAD and open up a shop. And so you start designing the educational path towards that goal that they have. I think right now there's none of that. I remember when I was in high school, it was, go to college. That was it. It was a big push to go to college, right? And a lot of kids that weren't ready, for that kind of got left behind. And because you weren't achieving, there was nothing for this whole segment of kids. And they're just like, okay, we'll just graduate you. And then you're off doing whatever you want to do, right? So there was no path. And with that, especially the ones that were stereotyped into, okay, this is all you're going to achieve, and you're just left off to wander, they got lost. They get lost into gangs, crime, the whole 9 yards, right? And so when we're not doing that for our kids, we're not finding their strengths, finding their goals, what they want to actually do in life, right? It could be, hey, I want to go into construction. I want to go be an electrician. I want to work in carpentry. I want to do various things. If we're not developing a curriculum for them to be successful adults and achieve what they feel they want to do as far as, what interests them, what we're doing is we're leaving a whole segment of kids and just saying, okay, well, if you don't go to college and you're kind of just going to graduate and go out.
Yeah, you're just going to go out. There's no other opportunity. And there's no reason for that. There should be like a VOTEC where someone should be like an apprenticeship program where they can go, they're employable right away.
Yeah.
You're providing a pathway to prosperity. I mean, my vision, I'd like Fairfax County to go back to being number one.
Yeah.
I have a mission statement to who, why, when, where, and how. Do it within, we have problems now for the school board. They literally, if you measure how many minutes they have spent, because it's measured in minutes, not hours, but minutes, that they actually spent through the course of a year, even talking about academics. They've spent less than 40 hours total during their entire, administration, even addressing academics. Most of the time, the school board is talking about accolades that they give to themselves. And meanwhile, we have seen like a drastic drop in scores. We've seen that have disproportionate impacts across minority communities, particularly. There's no reason with a $3.7 billion budget, we're not number one in everything. Sports, music, arts, VOTEC, everything. We are on the East Coast. We're on Silicon Valley in the East. In this area, we have the technology and the capability to do it, and we should be tapping into it. And they're by their own admission, with all of these single source contracts. That violates. I teach program management. You have to have a justification for a sole source contract. You just don't hand it off to your buddy. You compete because competition brings about quality. And what I've seen here is that they're just doing everything to minimize and eliminate competition, and that's not how you're going to get the best out of people.
When you start talking about the trade school and vocational schools, for myself, I think middle school is the time when you start introducing some of these other type of things like,
hey, I took shop in seventh grade.
Wood shop, home economics, welding, different things like that. So they get the exposure. The kids get the exposure. They see another side of things.
Yeah.
And from that, then when they move into high school, start developing their academic plan to achieve their goals or what they want to achieve. And not saying that a kid goes and say they get an apprenticeship and become a welder, right? Doesn't say that 3-4 years down the road after being a welder, they decide I'm going to go back to college next. I want to do something different. But the great thing about that is you gave them a skill, and that's why I love about the military. The military gives you a skill.
You tell people to shoot for the moon because even if you miss, you land among the stars.
Exactly.
All right, so speaking about racism, let's see. What did the trolls say? Any trolls have any comments or?
So you have two.
Oh, okay.
Actually, they're questions.
Okay.
The first one is, to what extent does FCPS reach out to immigrant parents in their own languages?
Oh, well,
virtually none.
Virtually none, other than providing like translation at like back to school nights. But they certainly don't provide you information as to what you could opt into or opt out of in native languages, and they certainly don't provide translations of question or explicit material that they put in school libraries and that are accessible to your child as young as 11.
Okay. There is a comment. The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yes, it is.
As the Supreme Court recently recognized, the way to combat racism is not with racism.
Absolutely. Amen to that.
Yeah.
Question, would you support mandatory computer science degree for all students?
Mandatory?
Computer science degree mandatory? I would make it.
I wouldn't say computer literacy. I think is important in just about every profession. I think we should offer literacy, but you're saying computer science.
I would say this, anytime you say make something mandatory, so you have to go do this, then you're taking the individualism of somebody, of what they want to do away.
Right.
You're forcing them into something, they're not gonna put their heart into it. For example, our special operations is the best special operations in the world. In our military.
But you have competition, because if you're not, the Israelis are going to talk a lot of trash.
But even in our military by far, is because it's a voluntary military.
Right.
People go into it because they have a passion
Right.
for something. And usually people tell them, well, people go to college to get a college degree. I tell them, well, they usually go into reserves because they don't go out to duty.
So, like,
before that.
But let's think about, like, you know, the computer literacy. I mean, computer science, I think that if they have a passion for it, we should provide. Well, we don't offer computer science degrees in high school, but I mean, we do offer. There is like dual enrollment programs where people can go into computer science and get an associate's degree through Nova. But computer literacy, I think, is important. I think children should learn how to use a computer, how to use what are safe online practices, not encouraging them to go onto sites that are inappropriate. Even though we have material that our schools would encourage kids to actually go into things that we would approve of as parents. And I do think that that is maddening is that why are we giving children in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, expecting them to learn off of a computer instead of an actual textbook? Because there's three forms of learning: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic. And you should go back to, like, you know, actually giving kids actual textbooks. And that's something that, I mean, we really do need to address. Kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, where children are learning how to learn.
Well, here's the other thing. You know, we talk about the computer science. You know, that goes into the VOTEC aspect of it, because, you know, have them exposed to certain things, because there's a lot of things that you could do in that realm, which just requires a 2-year degree in computers. You know, you don't have to go get a computer science degree. There's certain things that you can go get certifications to do.
I do. I teach a number of cybersecurity certifications. I teach the CISSP, the ISSAP, Enterprise Architecture. There are a lot of that don't require a degree at all. There are a lot of careers that require certifications, and we should actually have partnerships with some of these providers, like Learning Tree, Global Knowledge. I mean, those are just two, for example.
Coursera.
Was that, yeah, Coursera. Well, Coursera, I think, is like, you know, or like Udemy is another one. Like, you know, those are free. But there's a lot of, like, providers where, and there's no reason why we couldn't offer, like, summer programs where you can have a cohort of students and you can contract that out and compete it and get best value, because they don't compete contracts, and actually have students be able to attend one of these courses for a course of a week and get certified.
And see, that goes into the fact of you're taking these kids, individualizing them, working with them in early stages. I say middle school, exposing different things, what's out there, and then helping them achieve those goals.
Right.
And creating these courses for that. You know, because computer science, anything in the computer industry is going to be high market, right?
High market, and and you have to retrain your workforce every 4 years. And as a school board, our job is to provide services, goods and services, right? And the services is education, not political ideological indoctrination. And re-education. Our program, or look at programs that really don't have a positive return on investment, like the social emotional learning. Which is just, you know, it's not. It's what benefit, what return on investment. We need to look at education as an investment. And what are we investing in? We're investing in our children. These are our children. Children are precious. That's why we're here. We came here because this was, at the time when I moved here, it was the #1 school district. It isn't anymore. And we're trying to make it #1 again. But I think that, I lost my train of thought.
Nah, don't worry.
Yeah.
Question?
There's a comment,
Okay.
and I do have some questions. States are implementing mandatory computer science degree for all high schoolers. Virginia is lagging behind.
In a computer science degree.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
all
lacking
high
context. Do they have a reference to that so I can make comment on that?
Okay.
Because I mean, when they say degree, are you talking about a bachelor's degree, associate's degree, or
For high schoolers.
I think you're
For high
talking about having more computer science classes.
I'm in favor of that.
So computer science classes definitely, I think we just
Yeah.
talked about the vocational aspect of it to have them exposed to these
Right.
things, So they can look at it and say, hey, I'd rather go into this area versus getting a degree in something that's, say, my counselor said I need to get a degree in, or my parents want me to get it. So I think we're both in agreement that that goes more in the vocational, having them have exposure at the early ages so they can learn and figure out their paths.
Question here. Governor Youngkin is promoting lab schools. Please share your comments about that interesting initiative.
Oh, great. Okay, so let's talk about lab schools. So, as I mentioned before, not every high school offers the same courses that are out there. Lab schools actually allow professors to come in and provide and teach classes, which they do in some cases.
Yeah.
Langley's High School is one of them, where you can actually have professors from George Mason come in and teach some of the advanced math classes. Lab schools actually provide that opportunity. It eliminates the scarcity mindset of why people were fighting over Thomas Jefferson to begin with. Thomas Jefferson, for example, when it was first founded in 1985, there were three pillars to that architecture. You got funding from the governor, funding from Fairfax County, and it also had a lot of investment from industry in the area. And that was via the TJ Partnership Fund. And with the TJ Partnership Fund, what they did is they ended up supplementing the salary of teachers that would come in, professors, and teach a lot of these advanced classes. Current school board voted and they repealed that, which is why you see the degradation of TJ. We're starting to collapse. Lab schools go back to like, okay, well, you should be expanding opportunities. You may not have a magnet school, but you can actually bring in lab schools where you can bring in professors, people who can teach classes that a lot of the teachers in the K through 12 space may not be qualified to teach. There are some, even in private schools, you bring in like my kids' school, like a math teacher is a math teacher. They will teach all subjects.
Yes.
And you can bring in lab school where you have like specialists for each subject. They're proficient, and you can measure them and know which ones are good and which ones aren't.
And that kind of goes with each school individualizing the students, figuring out
Right.
what their strengths are, and then providing the actual resources.
And the parents should have an option.
Take care of it.
Parents should have an option to do that. Like even if you're a homeschooler, a homeschool parent, like you should be able to like pick what classes your child wants to do. If you can provide, especially if the school can't provide transfer to everybody. But for example, if you had a kid that, if you're homeschooling your child, because you pay taxes, you have a right to have access to those facilities.
Oh yes, of course.
You do have a right. You should have a right to take the class. Like if you want to teach your child like 3 subjects, but there's one class at this high school, and you know what time it's at high school or middle school or even elementary school, and you know what times you offer, you should be able to transport your child over there and take that class and come back out.
It should.
It should be a la carte. There should be not all in.
Yeah.
So
Any more?
Yes. Montgomery County refuses to let parents opt out their kids from social and emotional learning sessions. Is FCPS considering doing the same?
yes, they are. They are considering making social emotional learning a part of the curriculum, which the creation of social emotional learning only came about with ESSER funds, which was during the pandemic, which gave all of us as parents an insight as to what was going on in our schools, which is what brought a lot of the national rage over education, where we had an insight. Fairfax did not used to always be this way. The push towards degrading quality of education started back in 2012, and we're looking to reverse that.
And when you start adding in certain these subjects that have nothing to do with the actual core curriculum, it takes away. I tell a lot of people, there's only so many hours in a school day.
Right.
And so when you start adding certain things that should be left with the parents.
Well, or worse yet, like a lot of the questions, and that you don't, as a parent, you're not even able to see the questions that they're asking your child. Like this is going into like secret conversations.
Well,
with your
it's
kids.
transparency.
Yeah, it's a lack of transparency.
And when you start looking at it, it's lack of transparency, lack of parent rights, lack of working with the student and finding out what achievements they want to get in life, where they want to be in life. And we have a school that's dictating certain things. We're going to shape your child the way we think they need to be shaped. We're going to tell your child.
No, that's interesting you said that. How we're going to shape your child. That's basically, we're going to indoctrinate your child for you. We're going to raise your child. We're going to instill core values, ethics, values, and core beliefs in your child that lead you to that. And that's not their role.
Yeah, it's not
Their role is to teach them reading, writing, and arithmetic, and reading, writing, and math. I mean, not more than just.
Well, I will say this: their view of success is more the social aspect of it. Success means we're going to have them more I hate to use that word, inclusive to everything. It's more of a social aspect of it, where their role as far as schools and the school board should be preparing your child to be a successful person as far as being able to get a job, being able to
being employable. But like, are our teachers, are they psychiatrists? Are they actually qualified to conduct a lot of the social emotional training? I mean, I've been to parent teacher meetings, and where teachers complain that this is beyond the scope of their duties.
Oh, of course.
And
most teachers don't want this. They want to go back to why they're teaching. They
for
want to
example,
teach math. They want to teach science. They want to teach history.
For example, my daughter took the online health and PE over the summer, and some of the questions were blatantly inappropriate. I mean, like, when you go into like the sex ed part of it, which has two purposes, right? Is to prevent teenage pregnancy and the spread of sexually transmitted diseases. Those are the two purposes. That's the inherent governmental interest behind this program. But my daughter had survey questions that expanded into what my views on her dating are.
Yeah.
I mean, do you really want to know that? I mean, and is that any of your business? Like, who I am, what I am as a parent? That is complete, that is invasive, that is inappropriate. Or if you have like the questions that survey children, asking them in 4th, 6th, 8th, and 12th, 8th, 10th, and 12th grade, asking them how many partners have they had, and up to 1 to 10. Like, how is that any of their business?
It's not.
It is none of their business. It is not aligned to academic excellence.
Yeah,
and that's
why they because they're going more into indocking classes, having a vision and mission of what they should be doing.
What they should do, and they don't have it.
Yeah, vision should be, create successful adults that go into the workforce and provide for themselves. The mission, how are we going to get there? Well, we got to provide a certain amount of opportunities, from vocational to pathway to college,
Right.
and have a various exposure for everybody, all the students, and then work with parents and the students to develop a curriculum that will get
I
into
would
that
say,
path.
I don't think it's like, I think we need to move away from that word, work with the parents. Like, you work for the parents.
Yeah.
The parents are the one paying the taxes.
Mhm.
It's their child. I've been a referee for 18 years, right, in Fairfax. Like, I did youth all the way to college. I had the opportunity, even in club sports, to do the national championship game, between Navy and in UVA, for that, even at the club level, high level sports. But when you're dealing with someone's child, like, there's nothing that I say there on the field, and I'm only feet away from the parents, that I know the parents can hear everything that I'm saying.
Exactly.
Everything they get. I mean, there's no escape from it. And, it's full transparency. And it's really disturbing that you have a school board that is anything but transparency. I mean, look at some of the horrible things, like in today, like in the federal court in Alexandria. I don't know if you're familiar with the child rape case that they tried to cover up, and they tried to re-victimize. The girl was a person of color. You'll figure that they failed to protect her. And then when she came back to sue, they tried to traumatize her by having to go through an invasive, vaginal, anal, and service inspection. And even like women advocacy groups call that cruel and inhumane. And that's our school board. Those are the actions that our current incumbents have done. The current people who are running for office, like Melanie Garrett, Carl Frisch, Ricardo Anderson, didn't shoot that down. Karen Keys Gamara didn't shoot that down. These are people that need to be held accountable for it. And if parents knew about that, they wouldn't be having it. They should know that, if parents were aware, and not only that, but like, look at how many sexual assaults have happened and all the non-disclosure agreements that they have between incidents between students, between teacher, and teacher between students. And look at all these non-disclosure agreements that they're signing off left and right. We should be releasing all victims, all families, and the victims and their families should be released from non-disclosure agreements so they can talk about their experience.
Because no one wants to be held accountable.
They don't want to be held accountable, and that's what they should be doing.
Another question?
Have either of you visited that community center or service center at Tyson's Corner?
I've read about it. I have not, only because I just came back into country from actual working. So have you?
I have not been to the center. The places where I end up going to are to the community, or to the Rutgers Center, which provides, services to the homeless that are often marginalized and forgotten by Fairfax County. But I have not been to the center yet. But if it's in Fairfax, if it's in Tyson's Corner, who are they really servicing? It kind of reminds me of my experience with the first NAACP meeting after the pandemic. Most people aren't aware that our national, our NAACP chapter, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, is 95% white, and their first in-person meeting was at an Irish pub. I mean, so it's kind of reminding me of something like that.
It's a hypocrisy of things.
Yeah, it's a very hypocrisy. Yeah.
It's a hypocrisy. No, I mean, you have a Tyson's Corner in a very
That's a very affluent area.
where
How do you get access to
I
it?
think the best place to put it maybe down in Mason,
Maybe
Springfield.
maybe where the people are. You think, but you think they all have, like, the people that need that money have a metro pass in all cases?
Yeah.
There's no parking.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like literally the NAACP meeting was like, not only was it an Irish pub, it was at a golf course. I mean, there was no public transit or parking there anyway.
Well, sometimes
It's empty virtue signaling.
exactly. They try to push this out there that, hey, we're doing certain things for the minorities. When the reality is,
It's not really. It's
you're not. You're doing smoke and mirrors and you want to rip a cut type of thing, and you just want to say,
Self-esteem stand.
Yeah.
I did something.
I did something, which as reality has done nothing. Another question? All right. Perfect. Well, we hit our hour, and we went through a lot of good things over here. But at the end of the day, this is a community that we need to band together. Racism comes in many forms. It comes in color of skin. It comes from holding people back. It comes from stereotyping. It comes in many forms. And sometimes what people feel is a good thing, in reality, it's not. There's things happening in Fairfax County that obviously needs to be questioned. Just like the new place in Tyson's Corner and some of the things that we talked about, such as the 21% dropout rate for Hispanic students in Fairfax County. Doing good things to just highlight yourself, to make yourself feel good, doesn't really help the community. We need some real solutions. We need real actions. Now's the time to get away from politics and really look at helping our kids out. I think we came out with a couple of good solutions here that we're both going to be pushing together. A lot with vocational, a lot with
STEM access.
lab schools, different things like that. These are the things that we're going to do on that school board come November 7th. These are real solutions. Our current school board has not done that. The comments we got is something that we've both been hearing on the campaign trail, and we're going to continue to fight for that. And we're not doing this for ourselves. We're doing this to make a better tomorrow for our kids.
Because we have kids. We care. We
We're going to
care.
bring that up, especially against my opponent.
Well,
no kids,
and
Caucasian.
And voted to install a dog park rather than build a school.
Hey, I like dog parks.
Oh, we all like
Not
dog
over
parks,
schools.
but we're not going to part a dog park over a school that's needed.
So we got to put some humor into this at times because
It's true.
sometimes
It's
when
sad.
you take it so seriously, you get frustrated with the current situation.
Yeah.
And it is. We've both been attacked in various aspects. And a lot of it drives into, like I mentioned, about them saying that the only thing I'm good for is teaching boot camp. You got to take this in stride, especially being people of minority. Being held back, being told that you can't do certain things because of your background and what you've done is absurd.
And it's funny, these are the same people that turned their back on you when you were carrying the American flag.
Yes.
Yeah, the same people that turned their back or trying to criticize my patriotism,
Yeah.
despite having like over a 20-year career.
But hypocrisy is running high in Fairfax County, and now's the time. November 7th is election day, but early voting starts very soon.
And I believe it's September 27th.
September 27th. So please get out there and vote. We need to make a change. This is not about myself or Harry or any other candidates. It's about you. If you're ready to make a change, reach out to us, help us, volunteer, donate, do what you can. And then on top of that, not just you go out and vote, bring 10 friends to vote. And those 10 friends bring another 10. Remember, we've got to spread the word. We got to make a change. This podcast is about awareness. What's about trashing anybody? It's about awareness on what to do.
No, the trashing just happened because these are literally what they've been doing. So
I thank you. I thank you for your time. We can continue this for a couple more hours, but
Talk about your event tomorrow.
Oh, we also have a barbecue event.
No. It's a family fun day.
Family fun time event that's being pushed out, and it's going to be. And I apologize. I just came back. I'm actually working with a couple of clients in the security field. Which, funny thing is, a lot of people, especially on Twitter, said that Carl Frisk is actually better suited to protect kids than I am. Yet I get paid in the civilian sector to protect certain people. But yeah, Carl,
In community shelter from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m.
Beacon Community Center, I think Mary's gonna go ahead and put it on there, 1 to 5, please come down.
So you said, so the guy that voted and supported child rape is saying that those supporters are the saying that these children are safer with him than you?
Yes.
And-
Hypocrisy of.
That's amazing, because these are people, yeah, that's interesting. These are people who literally supported child rape, the ones that are criticizing. Okay.
And
all right.
so, it's a hypocrisy of everything, that's why sometimes you gotta laugh, and sometimes you gotta look at.
And it's sad, it's true, that's
You
why
gotta
we're
get the
fighting
political aspect out of this. You know, it's funny, they can say a lot of things to me, but one thing they can't say is my ability to keep all these kids, all our kids safe. And when you like that, I just had to laugh at it because, I just get paid for that.
I know, you get paid for
I get
that, right?
paid very-
Executive
I get-
protection,
I
right?
paid very well to do threat assessment risk analysis.
Hey, I'm a
And
former
protect-
human targeter,
Yeah.
right? You know, and
Yeah, I don't get it, but in their eyes, I'm only good for teaching boot camp and exercises, and I can't.
well, that's so
secure-
limited. That's so limited. I mean, everything they think is, you know,
Everything they think of is through a prism of.
they think
their
everything's
reality.
Full Metal Jacket. That's what they think it is. You know,
They do.
they do.
You know the funniest thing they just said to me also. Because I'm in the Secret Service, the CIA, that's where I came from. That I'm gonna make our schools into prisons. And
How do you get there? How
I don't understand.
What's the logical leap to get
So,
there?
so you know what I told them? I said, do you understand that the director of security for Fairfax County that you guys had for the longest time is a high-ranking retired Secret Service agents?
Do they do not, that tells you that's ignorance. Right? They do not know the difference between a bodyguard and an executive professional protection. They have no idea the difference between the two. One's deterrent, one's de-escalatory. They have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, and so it's the hypocrisy of this racism that goes on. It continues on stereotyping me in different ways, and that's racism. Saying that I am no good as far as coming from the Secret Service, that I would put all the kids into handcuffs, that I want to take black kids into and handcuff them, which, you know, my son
If you-
Dominic
if they-
right there is.
If they knew anything about, if you had executive protection professionals.
Then there's Dominic right here. So Dominic is my son, and he's what you consider, what everyone out there consider at risk. Everyone that said to me, all the Twitter people, Twitter trolls, as we like to say, said that I want to put young kids like him in handcuffs and ship them off to prison.
If
So,
they knew
it's-
anything
it's
about
amazing.
executive protection in that field, you wouldn't be having issues. You would not have the need for SROs and stuff,
Yeah,
you know, because there wouldn't be an issue. And you wouldn't have an issue where you certainly wouldn't need as many armed security guards either, because you're dealing with people who are professionals who know how to de-escalate situations, who have a wide variety of skill sets.
Yeah.
To assess threats, to de-escalate things, and when necessary, to take care of like significant issues, even dealing with active shooter threats.
But that is the racism and hypocrisy
is.
that we're dealing with, and why
And lack of respect. They really don't know what they're talking about.
This morning with them. Anyways, we could go on forever
Yeah.
with this. Like I said, this is the time to make a change. Racism, stereotyping is happening. It's happening right now. It's holding certain things back. It's not good for our community. We are two examples of two individuals who came from two different backgrounds that have dealt with this kind of stuff, sees the negative aspect of it, and now we laugh at it, but we know we're going to make a change. We know we're not going to hold ourselves back. The racism, stereotyping, calling us names for different things, not going to hold us back. Because our mission is a unique mission. It's a mission of just taking care of the kids, having a safe environment for them to grow and flourish. Any parting words?
Well, I think it was a great discussion that we had when we did talk about some of the issues, systemic issues that were within Fairfax, and how to approach that. And yeah, sure. And some of the things that we've experienced that we're still going to overcome, like we both had experienced races, different pathways. But this doesn't really phase us. I'm like, it's racism that's kind of like JV racism. You know what I mean? But it was racism itself. But you know, they haven't dealt with like hardcore racists like I think we've dealt with. But yeah, it's still we got to focus on safety for these kids.
Anything you want to plug? Website?
Friendsofharryjackson.com.
Can we put that on, Mary? Please go to his website, ask us any questions. Listen, if you are on the left, on the progressive left, and want more questions, ask questions. I'm open for you to come here and talk to my podcast. I'm open to go to any of your events. I've offered so many different times. If you wish to get a debate going on certain subjects, especially on this subject of racism, with any of the other candidates that are on the school board, such as Carl Marin or anyone else,
I'm going one further. I'll take on all challengers.
we'll be there, and we will talk, we'll debate, and we'll go through it. And I go as far as saying this goes out to just not anyone on the school board. It goes out to anyone running for delegate or Senate or anyone on the Democratic Party that wishes to debate any of these issues. Be more than happy to debate. Take it all the way to the top.
We know that they're not going to debate us.
I know, because I keep asking.
They're not going to debate us. Their record is horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. And we just scratched the surface in this conversation. Yeah, but I'll take on it. And if they want to challenge me, I'll come get some. I mean, that's
All right, thank you guys for your
All
time, and God bless.